I want to zero in on one phrase of Iago's. Iago talks a lot. He's one of the two most long-winded characters in Shakespeare. He and Hamlet are the two largest parts in Shakespeare. He's incredibly verbally creative, but looking at all of Iago at once doesn't tell us something. The way to understand these characters is to zero in on the close details of their language. Let me focus on, I will back off a little bit, zoom out a little, but first let me zoom in on this phrase. Sanctimony and a frail vow between an errant barbarian and a super subtle Venetian. Sentence continues. I'm going to leave the rest of the sentence alone. Sanctimony and a frail vow between an errant barbarian and a super subtle Venetian. He is talking about the marriage of Othello and Desdemona. Desdemona here would be the super subtle Venetian, which makes her sound sketchy. She's not. She is subtle, highly refined. She's okay, but she is made to sound sketchy. This is the rest of the phrase is even worse. Look at how Iagos language works. He is always bringing things down to the lowest possible level, reducing them to the lowest common denominator. So that in this very speech, love is just a lust of the blood and a permission of the will. Love is just sex. Not that love is also sex. Love is just sex. Iago makes the just a move implicitly, just of this, just of that. Love is just sex. Marriage here is just sanctimony and a frail vow. Religious conviction here, hypocritical religious conviction, sanctimony, and a frail vow. That's technically true from a certain point of view, that marriage is a vow. He makes it a frail vow. So all marriage is a frail vow? Like, a lot of people think marriage is much more than that. The marriage vows here are just a frail vow. Iago gives nothing credit for being anything than the lowest thing it could be. Then I want to talk about how he defines Othello, an errant barbarian. That is an incredibly grudging and ungenerous way to describe Othello. It is just barely technically true. Errant is the word for being an error, but also means to travel. The word err is originally to travel. To err is to kind of travel away from the right thing and travel off the path into being wrong. Knights, I'm like the characters in the night, all the knights in Fairy Queen are knights errant, knights who are off traveling around. Here he is an erring barbarian, or errant barbarian, right? An erring barbarian. Erring literally means traveling. He's just told, Othello's just told the story of his travels again, his travels through wild adventures to the Venetian Senate and to us in the audience. So he's been erring, but that Iago picks the word that also means mistaking, being confused. And, Othello is from outside European culture. This makes him a barbarian. That's the lowest possible. These things are technically true, but the worst, the most cynical way of imagining them. Later in the next act, he will say, in his next conversation with this character, with the person he's talking about, with Rodrigo, he will claim that Desdemona only loves Othello for bragging and telling fantastical lies. Bragging and telling fantastical lies would be the story of his journey, which seems much more than that. Taking Othello, the kind of traveling warrior, romantic warrior hero, and turning him to an erring barbarian is as grudging and as negative and as reductionist as it's kind of possible to be. Those words are technically true, just possible. So Iago describing, say, Duke Ellington would not say greatest composer in American history, but would say piano player in a bar. Was Duke Ellington a piano player in the bar? I mean, the Cotton Club was a bar. They served alcohol, the legendary Cotton Club in Harlem. Ellington led his band, played piano in the band he led, and composed groundbreaking music for. So I guess you could call Duke Ellington a piano player in a bar, but calling him that kind of misses just about the whole Duke Ellington thing. Calling Othello an erring barbarian is, guess he is technically that, but that kind of leaves out pretty much the whole Othello experience. Right? This is um, this is embedded in a longer passage where Iago is saying sex is just appetite. He's telling Rodrigo that Desdemona will get tired of Othello because in Iago's telling, love is just sex and sex is just appetite, and then when you have too much of a food you get sick of it. Your appetite will be sated. He uses the language of appetite a lot. You want something, you have too much of it, you get sick of it. That is the Iago worldview. It is expressed in his language. His language is a way of looking at things. There are other things about his language I want to talk about, but not till you've handed in your scavenger.